Hi, everyone. Happy to see everyone again. Um, well, I wanted to talk about the origin of the 7 steps. The experience I went through and how it came about. So, as I've said many times recently, SHI, what we now call SHI macrobiotics, is the third iteration of macrobiotic practice. The first was Osawa Macrobiotics. I never had the opportunity of meeting George Osawa. It was mainly from his books and stories, lots of stories from people who actually did know him. I did have the opportunity of meeting Lima Osawa twice, or meeting her twice personally. I saw her more times in seminars, but she stayed at my house twice. I also had the chance of interviewing her twice together with Murray Snyder. So I had a further feeling of George Osawa through Lima. And she lived to be over 100 and quite an amazing woman. But also she definitely had George Osawa's spirit and the idea of strictness of practice. Although she made her cooking much more wide and rich, but still the same basic ideas. And Kushi Macrobiotics that expanded out the practice to the standard macrobiotic diet, relaxed things quite a bit, but it was still restrictive. So basically, I asked myself a question for many years, and that is, why did so many people say, I practiced macrobiotics for whatever period of time, then I gave it up. But I never felt better in my life than when I did it. Well, if you never felt better in your life, why didn't you continue? Well, the answer was it was too restrictive. There were a number of problems inherent. So somebody coming from the modern diet, eating animal foods, dairy foods, fried foods, sweets, etc. Then they stop that and they eat a grain, bean, and vegetable-based diet, organic foods, mostly simple preparation, and then they go through an initial period of elimination, discharging. Then they just start to feel better and better and better, clear, bright, and they start to look better. But then it gets to the point that they can't take it. Just too much pressure builds up inside. They start to eat some other foods and the dam bursts. So this is not related to the 7 steps, but my biggest experience with that was in the late 60s, trying to avoid being drafted in the Vietnam War. My number was almost up and being drafted was imminent. And I had a physical scheduled. I'd never even been down for a physical because I was avoiding it. And my macrobiotic friends said, fast for a few weeks before, then you'll look too emaciated for them to take you. So I started my fast. And on the 8th day, I came down. We had a study house and there was some soft rice cooking on the stove. And I smelled that. I said, I'm just going to take a bite, one mouthful of the soft rice. So I ate one mouthful and the dam burst. And for the next 2 weeks, I ate everything under the sun. Now, I must say, when I was fasting, I never felt better in my life. I had energy. My intuition was amazing. I just knew what people would say. I knew where a parking space. I was light, intuitive. I felt unbelievable. I took this one taste of food and literally I ate everything under the sun for 2 weeks. I was supposed to go get my physical. I was stricken with panic and fear and I called in sick. And a few days after that, they ended the draft. I was saved. So I was saved by my 2 weeks of binging of everything under the sun. But my point is, fasting was, from eating simple macrobiotics for a while already, then fasting was too much. I couldn't take it. And then, I just couldn't continue. I was launched into something else. It's a similar pattern. At any rate, I used to ask myself all the time, why do I have this incredible experience with macrobiotics? Why do a number of people around me also have this incredible experience and then others don't? It was too restrictive, it was too hard, it was something. And Well, so I was always asking myself, how can I help other people have a similar experience to my own? In the 80s, in the mid 80s, we did a seminar called the Discovery Program. It was to help people get started in macrobiotic practice. It was like a forerunner to our beginner seminar now, except it was just a one day. It was like a 10 to 4 or 10 to 5, I don't remember. And in there was one small part, which was how to help your family and friends transition and how to transition to the macrobiotic diet. And that part of the seminar was, don't worry about taking away, only worry about adding. In other words, introduce your family and friends to things that they might like and make a slow transition. And really, I didn't realize at the time, I had forgotten about it. I had long forgotten about that seminar. I didn't realize that was really the key to strengthening health. The next thing was throughout the 80s, starting 81 to 83, I moved to London. I ran the Cush Institute there. People from all over East and West Europe came to study at the Cush Institute. And I had the opportunity to meet with people, throughout Europe and to hear their stories, to hear their experiences. And I started to gather information about traditional diets. And at that time, I started to notice that there's similarities. There are amazing similarities to what they were doing, to what I was introduced to from macrobiotics. And so I started to also read books on traditional diets, the traditional British diet, traditional other diets, and I started to see more similarities. At that time, I traveled widely throughout Europe, Eastern and Western Europe, and wherever I'd go, I would say, and I especially used to go to Poland a lot, I don't want macrobiotic food when I'm here. I only want your traditional cooking. I don't care what it is. I don't care what's in it. Just, of course, they tried to give me, vegan style or with fish, macrobiotic food. But I said, I don't care what's in it. I just want your traditional cooking. I want to see what the pattern, what people were eating, so-called peasant food. And they saw these dairy restaurants in Poland at the time. I don't know if they're still there, but they had grains, they had soups, they had vegetables, they had pickles. It was really like macrobiotic foods. And there was another teacher who used to go there that I heard, another student of Osawa who I never met, Kikuchi, who lived in Brazil, and I heard he absolutely loved those restaurants. But at any rate, point I'm trying to make, I started to notice these similarities, that there is a similar eating pattern throughout all traditional civilizations. So wherever I looked, whether it was anywhere in Asia, India, the Middle East, Mediterranean, all of Europe, the Americas, so Mexico, Central, South America, and Africa, North Africa, and the rest of Africa, they all had the same pattern: grains, beans, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and fruits. They lacked the seaweeds and soy products that we use that were common to Japan, but I discovered that all coastal people ate sea vegetables anywhere in the world. All island countries and coastal people ate sea vegetables with two exceptions. Well, no, with one exception. That's Africa. They ate river and lake weeds. Southeast Asia ate seaweed like the rest of Asia, and they also ate river and lake weeds. In Africa, they only ate river and lake weeds as far as I could find out. But so other than that, the same pattern existed everywhere in the world: grains, beans, vegetables, seeds, nuts, and fruits, naturally pickled and fermented foods, mild beverages, and mild sweeteners. And this was the pattern everywhere. And, I had talked to Michio about it a number of times, but Michio was on one track of spreading what was traditional about Japan, the rest of the world, as Osawa wanted. And I can appreciate that having that been their background, but at the same time, I understood that, and Michio's dream was one peaceful world. That to me, it occurred to me at that time, one peaceful world begins when enough people start to eat their own traditional grains and we start to eat all grains together, including rice, but not limited to rice. So that was really a big turning point, that macrobiotics to spread and flourish would have to acknowledge and appreciate and respect the world's traditions, not only Japan and Asia. And although Asia and Japan developed something unique, especially Japanese temple cooking, from what I could discover and learn, each area also had something unique. And what they did, and what I started to do is I started to basically analyze each traditional diet and look at it. What did they eat according to the latitude and according to the climate? And what I discovered was, in macrobiotics, we have the unifying principle that we all have a common origin, everything is connected, one thing changes to another. It guides macrobiotic practice. And the unifying principle uses yin yang, the principle of balance and harmony in macrobiotics. And together with that, we use the 5 transformations. So when I started to look at all of these, traditional diets according to these things, yin yang and 5 transformations, I said, I don't know if they knew about yin yang. I don't know if they knew about the 5 transformations, but they discovered these things one way or another because it was consistent everywhere. It was amazing. And I still have a manuscript about all these studies. I still, one of these days, we'll publish it. It's still sitting on my desk somewhere. But at any rate, so the same principles also applied. In other words, people weren't just eating grains, beans, and vegetables and the other foods. They were eating these foods, making combinations, styles of cooking according to, where they lived. And they developed it to make balance with the environment. And another thing that led me towards that. So I mentioned in 1981, I moved to London to run the Community Health Foundation and Kushi Institute there. Michio asked me if I would go to take Phil Tara's place, which I said, yeah, sounds like a good adventure. And I thought, well, I'm practicing macrobiotics 12 years. That was in 1981. I thought, 12 years macrobiotic, I really know what I'm doing. I'll go to London. And things didn't go well at first. Because how I thought I should eat in London didn't work out very well. About 6 months after I was there, invited Michio and Alvin to come for a seminar. And I saw them and I knew I made a big mistake. I could see my condition compared to theirs. Theirs was bright and shining and mine was like dark and heavy. And I said to Michio, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And he just said barley. He said one word. I was thinking millet is wet and damp, soil nature, so I would eat millet. So Michio just said one word to me, as he'd often do. He said barley. And it's like, a light went off. And I thought, okay, what are the traditional grains in the UK? Wheat, barley, and oats are the main grains. They ate other grains. There was some rye, there was some buckwheat there, but wheat, barley, and oats. And I thought, these grains actually, the UK has a very downward, very damp, kind of dark. They don't have the sunshine, the brightness, the upness that we have here. A lot of, Northern Europe has a very similar type of environment. It's a very unique environment. So you need, the reason all these grains were, prevalent there because they're uplifting. They lifted people's energy in that environment and allowed them to, live long, healthy, active lives. So that was the beginning of my discovery about the principles. So then, okay, the next step was 1992 to 5, I was in Portugal. Basically, I went to Portugal because out of frustration, the same frustration, I said, macrobiotics is the best game out there. It has more value than anything else in every possible way, and nobody's doing it. There's so few people. What can we do to change this? So I went together to get together with Chico Varatojo, who unfortunately has passed, and Martin Halsey, who's in Milan, Italy, still very active. He has our counterpart organization there in Milan. And we tried to do a project that totally failed, didn't work at all. Before I left, I had a teacher of Oriental astrology, Takashi Yoshikawa, teacher for 9-star K, 9K. And he kept saying to me, Portugal is a poor country. Why are you going to a poor country? Then he'd say, if you tell them eat rice, vegetables, and fish, they'll say, we eat rice, vegetables, and fish. What else is new? He said, they're not going to listen to you. If you go there, go as an Oriental astrologer, then you'll be very successful. Well, I can't tell you how stubborn I am, and I didn't pay any attention to that advice. In hindsight, my whole experience in Portugal would have been very different because astrologers do very well there and they have very good lives. And Macrobiotic teachers and counselors, for the most part, struggle there, which I did. But at any rate, I lived in a fishing village. I had the experience of a lifetime of living in a village that was back in another era. Women, brought their goods to market on donkey carts, just to give you an idea. It was virgin soil. There was a different wildflower every month of the year, which only grow on virgin soil, even including poppies, which are astoundingly beautiful. So I got to live, and I also got to see how we go in purposely and destroy a traditional culture. So I got to see the local farmers driven out of business and everything by big agriculture conferences. So anyway, I saw the end of an era and the beginning of the modern age of bringing Portugal into line with the European Union, to make sure they were in line with the rest of it, which they did very successfully. But at any rate, so I lived in a fishing village, and I had a chance to go to the beach a lot. My kids love going to the beach, so I'd take them to the beach. And the water there was much rougher than I was used to. The waves used to just break down. Some days, a lot of days, I couldn't get in the water. It was cold every day of the year. It never warmed up there, even though it's the same latitude as here. It's only in the south of Portugal where the water gets warm, like I'm used to. And it's always rough. So it goes from mildly rough to really rough. So I'm sitting there one day and just watching the waves are breaking, and an idea came to me. It just came to me and said, we're doing everything backwards. We're trying to tell people what not to eat. We're trying to tell people how to be perfect, how to do everything. And I thought, it's all wrong. If we start at the center and only think about adding, then we create an opening spiral. Now, my analogy, because I like to simplify everything to its simplest terms, and I always thought Macrobiotics is like a closing spiral, and we're trying to hit the bullseye to be perfect. That's the impression I had. So at any rate, I thought if we start at the center and we create an opening spiral, number one, it's based on yes, not no. It's based on a positive, not a negative. And a negative can't really lead to balance. The Oriental model of teaching is no, no, no. You don't understand anything. You're not there yet. Rap on the head till you have a breakthrough and have an opening they call enlightenment. I mean, that's the Oriental model. Some people have the breakthrough and others don't. But at any rate, it doesn't work for modern life, the modern world, and it certainly didn't work in the West. So although we need a model based on yes. And together with that, my experience throughout the years were two things. Number one, imbalances perpetuate themselves. Once we get imbalanced, once we get off track, that imbalance grows automatically over time. So everyone makes the worst choices possible in their diet, in their eating habits, in their activity, in their life choices. Everyone knows we go from one bad thing to another, or one good thing to another. It depends on which pattern we start. Some people have a wonderful relationships their whole life. Some people go from one bad relationship to the next, right? Or business or whatever. Imbalances perpetuate themselves in all of life. You can't go against the pattern. It's the order of the universe. However, balance perpetuates itself. So if we can help people create a new pattern based on balance, starting in the center, adding things that are balanced, eating habits, and rising and sleeping styles which align people with nature's energy, nature's cycle, which gives everyone nature's balance. You get up with the sun, you go to sleep. When the sun's down, you eat when the sun is here, here, and there. I mean, it's nature's cycle, nature's balance. People did that for 10,000 years around the world. Then what I call biological balance, grains, beans, and vegetables. We center our diet on the most balanced foods. Balance perpetuates itself. Then we add balanced activity. What's the most balanced activity? Well, walking. The body rub returns us to balance. We try to make a natural environment, unclutter our environment, get green plants, try to have natural materials, try to minimize EMFs, etc. So in other words, we start to add balance in various areas of our life. And then we create a new pattern of balance that's much more open and flexible. Then, after that, then we encourage people to investigate and to include their traditional style or traditional cooking that they're attracted to. It could be your own tradition, or it can be what you've come to like, as long as it's a traditional style that we can adapt to macrobiotic practice. Now, all of this is like an outgrowth of what macrobiotics was. When I started practicing macrobiotics, I thought, okay, I had my store, but 2 weeks in the spring, 2 weeks in the fall, I'd go to Boston, live in a study house, experience life there. The first time I was in a study house, I actually went for a whole summer. I was there for 3 months. And people there were so strict. One night a week, Sanai, the macrobiotic restaurant there, had azuki bean brownies. They weren't very yin. Azuki beans and squash and raisins, and people would go and they would binge out on these things like you couldn't believe. Well, on the way down there, everyone piled in my car. I can't tell you, I had an old Mustang. I can't tell you how many people were in my Mustang. I'll tell you, there's a lot more than 6. And everybody piled down in my car. And the way back, I drove by myself, a few miles to the study house. Everybody said, "Oh, I binged, I have to walk back." I said, "What? Okay, it's your choice." So that was our weekly routine. We'd go down there, we, eat everything and eat our azuki azuki chestnut brownies, even more young. That's right, they were azuki chestnut brownies with raisins. Maybe they had rice syrup, I don't even remember. But anyway, there was nothing in about them. They were heavy and as dense as can be. They did have a nice sweet taste. So everybody would walk back. And then the other thing that really bothered me was people would eat strictly, and then they would go out and they would binge in secret. And they would eat everything under the sun. They would go out and they eat 5 desserts. How do I know? Because I hear people complaining about, "Oh, I ate this last night, I ate that, and I can't believe I ate all this." And not one person, but tons of people. And then one night we were sitting on the porch after dinner, and it was such a high rice diet. It was practically the only grain, except for, udon and soba, noodles or mochi. It was such a high grain diet. There weren't many vegetables. There wasn't much liquid. And I started to get indigestion, heartburn. And I thought, what can I do to make my digestion better? I never had heartburn in my life. I heard people talk about it, but I didn't know what it was. So I had this heartburn, this burning and everything. So I said, my intuition said, you need a beer. And I went and I got a beer. So I'm sitting on the porch after dinner drinking a beer. And everybody's, what are you doing? I said, I'm drinking a beer. That's too young. You can't have a beer. I said, okay, well, whatever. Again, right, you can walk home from the restaurant. You can eat your high brown rice diet without beer. And it was one of those experiences. So then I said, when I go back to Philadelphia, I'm starting Philadelphia style macrobiotics. Philadelphia always had a lot of good cooks. And, we always had our style of macrobiotics. I said, what we're going to do in Philadelphia is we're going to make social macrobiotics. I said, if we want to go to a restaurant, we're not going to binge. We're going to go to a good quality restaurant. And if we get a dessert, we're going to share it. 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, whatever. But it's going to be done socially in a group and not in secret. Because there's nothing healthy about eating strictly and then binging, eating out of control. So the thing is, if you practice macrobiotics, whether you're eating at home or you're traveling or a restaurant, a macrobiotic person still makes the healthiest choices possible, and we do it together, we share. So that became the basis of the strengthening health approach based on adding. Any amount of practice is okay. It's based on traditional cuisine, not only Asian. It makes use of the world's grains: brown rice, barley, millet, buckwheat, wheat, rye, corn, and oats, as well as the wild grasses. Well, buckwheat's a wild grass, quinoa and teff. So using all beans, all vegetables. And Susan and I have greatly widened like the beans list, the vegetables list, the seasonings list, beverages. Basically tried to make it in line with the vegan and vegetarian practices, so that everyone could have a healthy practice. And the other thing that I think is unique about the strengthening health approach is, in counseling, I always ask people, is your partner going to practice with you? More often than not, people say no. They say, well, let me ask the question in a different way. I said, if you cook healthy food, whether it's a man or woman, if you cook healthy food, will they eat the healthy food together with you, no matter what else they're going to eat? And more often than not, they say yes. I say, that's good enough. As long as you're eating healthy food together, they can add on whatever they want, because meat or chicken together with grains, meats, and vegetables is far better than without. Years ago, at the Seventh Inn restaurant, there was a master chef, Hiroshi Hayashi. He was really a wonderful chef. And Michio was trying to do some research of what would happen, people eating a vegan macrobiotic diet, then people eating the macrobiotic diet with meat. So a group of people volunteered, I wasn't one of them, for 2 years to have their blood checked before. And then after 2 weeks, and every day they ate the Seventh Inn, and Hiroshi cooked macrobiotic food plus meat for them. And at the end of the 2 weeks, no one's cholesterol went up, because he cooked the meat so well, he neutralized all the toxification that, plus they were eating it together with macrobiotic food. So the point I'm trying to make is, even if your family doesn't want to be vegan or pescatarian, they want to continue with animal and dairy foods, just add it on. Whatever they want, add it on. Just eat healthy food together. So point is, I think strengthening health, and of course, we'll get to the point that this needs to be revised and changed, but for the foreseeable future, it's a way of macrobiotic practice that's open, it's adaptable, it's embracing, and it can bring people together. And it's based just on healthy. And the other thing that's unique about it is our emphasis on it's important, just as important. How you eat is just as important as what you eat. In other words, that makes it truly a mindfulness practice, that we put so much emphasis, not so much, but equal importance on how we eat, our eating habits, our approach to eating as what we eat, and then making that part of our overall lifestyle. So that's really the origin of the strengthening health approach, which we're continually developing and trying to preserve traditional macrobiotic cooking, because the essential dishes we learned, the brown rice and miso soup, nishime and seaweed, etc., dried daikon, these are unique dishes. They cannot be replaced. At the same time, the contributions from the world around the world are unique as well. And at home, basically, we eat one so-called macrobiotic, traditional macrobiotic meal a day, and then another more Mediterranean or Mexican or Middle Eastern or something that, which is still macrobiotic, but just more open style. So if you have any questions, be happy to try and answer them. And that is our approach.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Denny, for that. So at this time, we can move to a Q&A session for about another 15 minutes or so. I am going to allow individuals to unmute themselves. I just ask that if you do have a question, you can either raise your hand and then I can call on you, or if you unmute yourself, I can see that you're unmuted and then I can call on you. Also, too, I know there's some individuals that are on Facebook Live. I'm going to be periodically going back to check those sections as well too, to make sure if anyone has a question, it could be addressed. So you can also use the chat feature as well too, in case you don't know where the chat feature is. I'm just going to say hello right there in the chat, and you can also respond with a question there. So if anyone has any questions regarding what Denny has spoke about today, feel free. So Nora, looks like you have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Well, America is such a mix of cultures. What is
Right.
our traditional food? Do we have a traditional food?
I mean, we don't really have a traditional food. I mean, a lot of people grew up eating oatmeal. A lot of people grew up eating beans. You know, you have grits in the South, and you have kale and collard greens. Things like that. So there are some some traditions. Some people eat buckwheat. So there are some traditions, but there's not a clear tradition other than what people brought with them. But usually that didn't last here. I was amazed, when I used to travel to Toronto, how they had so many ethnic areas there that had wonderful ethnic cooking, like we didn't have here. But like in Philly, we have a strong Italian tradition, so there's a lot of good Italian food here. But that's about it. Now there are actually some Middle Eastern that's quite good, and also the Mexican. So it's just what people brought with them, but we don't have a so-called American tradition as far as I can see.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Michelle, I guess.
Well, hi. Thank you for that lecture today. Very informative as usual. And, I have one comment and a question. And it's too bad that we couldn't grow coconut trees around here, because I would love to incorporate that in my diet locally, but oh well. So my question is, bleeding anal hemorrhoids. Now that's a new thing for me. I'm wondering what goes on in the body to even cause something like that. Is that a simple question or not?
That's actually two questions. Number one,
Oh.
the reason we don't recommend coconut here is not because it can't grow. I guess it grows in Florida, I guess. But a season is 4 months, is 3 months. Our blood changes every 120 days, right? That's very important. Now, coconut is liquid in the tropics and solid here. Okay. So why it's important that a season is 3 months and our blood 120 days changes every 4 months is that what we eat in one season affects us in the next. So people say, well, why can't I eat tropical fruit in the summer? You can't, because the summer's followed by the fall. And as soon as the weather changes, you're going to have problems from the tropical fruits you ate during the summer. Basically, the tropics have 2 seasons. They don't have seasonal change the way that we have. And that's the same with all tropical fruits. Now, oranges are more, and tangerines are more subtropical. Lemons, they work very well in this climate. And they don't cause their, I mean, they're much more young as far as fruits compared to the other ones. So, plus everyone needs more refreshing things, which makes them, you know, a welcome addition to our way of eating here. But, you know, the first time I traveled to the tropics and I had coconut and drank the coconut milk and ate the coconut, I thought, wow, this is amazing, because it opened up my condition. It's liquid there. So it's actually makes you adapt to the climate. It's wonderful food in the tropics. Same with all other tropical fruits. When we had our vacation in Costa Rica, and I'm not much of a fruit eater, you know, but in Costa Rica, starting off every day with a lot of tropical fruit was ideal. I mean, I didn't feel right without it because, again, it aligns with the climate. So Macrobiotics, one of the uniqueness is we respect, you know, our connection to the environment and to the climate. Now, hemorrhoids are common among macrobiotic people, I'm sorry to say. The reason is because we eliminate past young foods down. So our way of discharging is from the periphery to the center, from the top to the bottom. So as we practice past animal foods, cheese, eggs, all that, start to discharge down. If our practice is too young, they gather in our anus and create hemorrhoids. So basically, light, refreshing macrobiotic practice that's not too strict, not too much salt. And you have to be very careful of peanut butter, dense foods, because dense foods make them gather more. So bread and peanut butter, a lot of people like corn chips or all those things, or some people go for pizza and anything like that, or bagels, any very dense foods worsen the situation. But light, refreshing macrobiotic practice helps get rid of them. It's an unfortunate side, I guess I can't think of the word, of macrobiotic practice, but it actually is a good sign. It means you are eliminating your past excess.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
All right, so I'll move on to a question that we have here. It says, at your retreats at Temenos, we ate good macro, but then it was recommended to go out and eat anything at a restaurant while we were there. Do you still recommend that?
Well, anything, yes. Like, as I said, if we want to be healthy, we should always want to be healthy under any circumstances. That means when we choose foods for enjoyment, we should make healthy choices that are appropriate. Like Micho is very relaxed in his practice, and he ate pretty much everything. And we were out, and some new macrobiotic guy was with us, and he grabbed some muffins. And this guy was as yin as can be. And I'm surprised. Micho looked at him and said, put that back. Well, anyway, because it was so inappropriate. That's the last thing in the world this guy needed was more, muffins, pastries, donuts. So we should always try. That's how we learn to create a balance and be flexible. And I don't know, Tron, is our new macro plate up on the SHI website?
Yes.
Okay, so if you go to the SHI website, we've revised the Macrobiotic Plate, the macro plate, similar to the other one, 25% grains, 25% beans and soy products, 25% vegetables, 25% other foods, and then all the other foods, soups, pickled and fermented foods, sea vegetables, seasonings, natural sweeteners, mild beverages. But then we added special occasions / optional that you might choose or might not. Animal and dairy food, fish, sweets, and family favorites. So the point that, and if I wasn't so strict in the beginning, I have two, I don't have many regrets in my life. When I was in Japan, I lived in Japan, I taught English like all the other foreigners there. English is a second language. And one of my students, his uncle was Yakuza, Japanese mafia. And as a favor for teaching his nephew, he wanted to take me out for a night in Osaka. And the first stop was a famous restaurant that had Kobe beef. And I was so stubborn, I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't want the Kobe beef. I just want fish. It was kind of like an insult. It was a terrible thing. It's one of my huge regrets because my only chance in my life to actually taste Kobe beef, I don't even like meat. I didn't like it growing up, but I do like experiences. So I'm sorry, I mean, that was the real thing. At any rate, so that's one of them. Second is my mother was a wonderful cook, a wonderful baker. As I got more serious with macrobiotics, I started to refuse a lot of things that she made, even on holidays. So that's my other regret. So family favorites aren't there forever. If your health allows, you can choose them. But again, we choose an appropriate amount that our health, can bear. It's not going to spoil our health. And social eating is a very important part of life. Right? Now, if we have a serious health problem, then we need to use our discretion, and it might not be the time right now. We might need to wait for the future. Okay.
Yeah, but Denny, I just want to make a comment there. The
Yeah.
high corn syrup in a lot of the baked goods now, I don't know if people use that in their baking, but that is so addicting. I had a muffin the other day and I couldn't just stop at one. It was like, anyway, I just want to make a comment that some of the junk food out there is such junk that you can't stop eating it.
No, that's absolutely right.
Oh, but I'm too young, so that was my issue.
No, that's absolutely right. When Mitch had come to town, he always wanted to go to restaurants, and what he liked most were diners. And at that time, diners had food. It was real food. We go to diners and we go to delis. And Mitch would always say, bring me a bucket of pickles, a mountain. And, they had the buckets of deli pickles, and we just stand, we'd go there and we eat a whole thing of pickles together. They were real pickles, pickle barrel, rind pickles that weren't chemicalized at the time. Muffins were real muffins, everything, pancakes. So it was food. So that's like when I said my mother baked, yeah, of course it had sugar, but it was food. It wasn't like the baked things now. Sometimes on the road and I'm trying to find something to eat, and I've gone and I've gotten, like a muffin, I couldn't eat. I said, what do they put in this? This is not food even. So it's unfortunate now what we can actually eat out is really limited. You can't go to diners anymore. Food's no good there. There's almost nothing you can eat in a Jewish deli anymore. Nothing that's actual food. They don't have buckwheat anymore. They don't have barley. They don't have all the things they used to have. Rice knishes, kasha knishes, all the things that were food that we used to go eat in the past. The pickles are all chemicals now. You can't eat them. So that is a problem. It's hard to choose foods out because the salt quality is so bad. the oil quality is so bad and the rest of the ingredients are terrible. You got to go to a good restaurant now to be able to eat. Yeah. Mexican food's always a good choice for, because they cater to vegans. So if they're not cooking the beans with lard, there's, a lot of choices there.
All right, thank you. I have a question here from Facebook. The question asks, what about coconut oil for baking?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't recommend. I have my worst foods list, and that is banana is the worst fruit, cashews are the worst nut, and coconut is the worst oil. The reason is, I'm an observer. I watch what people do for years and years and years and years. I'm a boring person. I'm a creature of habit. I never get tired of doing the same things, right? Ever. So I watch what people do for long, long periods of time. And I've watched a number of people who have had health problems within the macrobiotic community. There's a consistency. Bananas, cashews, coconuts. So what's the common point? So what is similar? What's common about this? And what's common is they block our ability to eliminate. Not in the tropics, it's the opposite. They enhance it. But in a temperate climate, coconut oil blocks our bodies to eliminate, to detoxify. That means it's especially harmful to our lower organs, our intestines and reproductive, and then to our brain. So if you use coconut oil, I wouldn't use it much. Now, never say never. So I can't say never, but there are other things, other oils that I think are better for baking. That I've heard. You can talk to other people that are better choices, than coconut oil. Yeah. Now, a lot of macrobiotic people and bakers will disagree with me and say, "Oh no, it's fine. Don't pay any attention to that." But so you have to make a choice for yourself.
All right, thank you. And looks like we have another question here. This may be our last question as we are nearing our 15-minute mark. The question asks, we're having trouble getting Turkish tahini. Do you have any advice?
I usually get it at a scene. If you order a case, you can order it directly from Tohom. Betty Minkin will ship it to you. And the other place you can get it, if you just want a couple jars, South River Miso Company is a distributor. So when a scene's out of it, and we're completely out, I've ordered a number of times from South River, but Betty Minkin, who makes the tahini, said she would ship cases to people. So you can contact her directly. Yeah, there's nothing like it. That is amazing tahini. Really, really special.
Excellent. And I'll allow this one last question because we brought up the question of coconut oil for baking, and you mentioned there being better oil. So what oil would you recommend, Denny?
I'm not a baker. I've heard safflower oil, I've heard olive oil, I've heard avocado oil, but I don't really know. I've hardly baked anything in my whole life, so I'm not, because I said my mother was an amazing baker, so that kind of scared me from even attempting something that would be inedible. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. So that will be the end of our Q&A section that we have here for the webinar. So thank you to all those who are here on Zoom. And then of course, those who were watching live on Facebook. Wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to reach all. So at this time, we can definitely close for any updates. Denny, did you have any final comments? And then I can just provide some updates as far as where you can hear Denny next.
Well, Susan knows a whole lot more about baking than I do. So in her weekly support group, you might want to ask that question of her. I'm sure she can give you some good direction on that. It's good to see you here and hope to see you at our Saturday webinar that I'm sure Teron's going to tell you about.
And you know what, Denny, I just want to address this one last question. It came in through Facebook just as I was wrapping up, and I think it may be an important one. It's from a Haley. I'm going to address this. What about the stress? What about the stress the limitations of the diet can cause? Is it still recommended to follow macrobiotics if you find it to be highly stressful to follow? I think that may be important for people to hear.
Well, okay, you can be a 1 meal a week macro. You can have, oatmeal and vegetables once a week. You can be a 1 day a week macro. You can be a weekend macro. You can be a 1 meal a day macro. In other words, the whole idea of it is to incorporate macrobiotic principles within your lifestyle. And I tell my clients, it's no good trying to do everything I recommend. It's no good trying to be stressed that you can't do everything or can't do it properly. Anything is better than nothing. Basically, what we're trying to do, your goal is to change the percentage of healthy to unhealthy. And if you can get up to 30%, which is approximately 1 meal a day, that's healthy, it's enough to tip the scales towards health over time. It can make an amazing difference. 2 meals a day is amazing. So a lot of people find they have 2 healthy meals and eat whatever they want with 1 meal. And the other thing is health craves health. The more healthy food you eat, the more you crave. The more healthy practices like walking and a body rub, you crave other healthy activities. So basically, do what you can comfortably with your eye on trying to create health supporting habits in your diet, activity, and lifestyle over time, and let nature run its course. Getting stressed, life is stressful enough. So you don't need to add extra pressure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tehran. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you. See you soon.
All right.
Bye now. Bye-bye.